board. Today we have Weston McCrary from the Kansas Water Office and William Carr from the Director of Bureau of Water from KDHE. Wes, you're up first.
Lines. Okay, we set to go. It's not for, let's make sure. Technical pause. Okay, last time I was here, I presented 2 years ago when we were just 2 years into the introduction of the new Water Innovation Systems and Education program. So I thought I'd give you a quick review of what the upgrade to the program is over where we've been in past years, and then kind of highlight on one of the big things we've been working on this year. The WISE program is an expansion of our legacy water tech farm and PACE program, farm programs that were started in 2016. So we're now at a 10-year mark. It focuses on pilot projects and feasibility studies used to advise policy, planning, research, and cost share programs in the state of Kansas. It's a public-private partnership program that focuses on fostering implementation of field practices, equipment, technologies, management strategies, and education, all kind of together contiguously. And the goal, of course, is resulting in measurable and scalable water conservation, improved water quality, overall ecological soundness, and enhanced public health, all using economically viable solutions. So that's a pretty wordy way of saying we're trying to be the pathfinders and kind of the scouts of things that may result, that may deem worthy to have further research done, and we want to be able to be good advisors to all of Team Kansas players in the water and conservation space. Going to it's not letting me do it. If you can go to third slide, please. You might want to check that. In conjunction with our irrigation, thank you. In conjunction with our irrigation technology initiative and our High Plains Aquifer RCPP project, we realized that we had a need for creating a baseline by which to measure from. Some of you are familiar with that project, and the target on that was to save 10% or demonstrate that we have saved 10% of water across the High Plains Aquifer network. But we needed a consistent way across all of the groundwater management districts by which to measure. Well, if we only use year-end water use, when you have kind of variations like we've been having over the last number of years with variabilities between drought and then heavy rain, and of course mixed in with hail and tornadoes, it gets very, very difficult to kind of baseline where you're starting from and where you're going to. I'm pushing a button here, so it's there we go. Thank you. Okay, let's go forward. There we go. Just a little bit of a delay. We'll get there. We'll get there. So when we go into a field, we notice that there's a lot of variability in distribution of water. It's not a matter of if we pump 1 gallon of water, we don't always get that 1 gallon of water into the soil root zone and available to the crop. In a perfect world, what we call water duty, we will pump a gallon of water, and that entire gallon of water would make itself into the crop and return in some viable economic return. Well, that's a perfect scenario, and that's not actually what happens out there, because there's a lot of places where water is lost between pumping it out of the ground and getting it into a crop. And you can see here, using some of this satellite imagery, that there are a lot of different pattern disruptors that can happen. If you don't have consistent regulated pressure all the way out across the center pivot system, you won't have even distribution of water. Mechanical failures, low pressure, you can see some of the demonstrated images above. So knowing that we need to create a baseline system that all of the cost share programs that we were working on were going to be baselining off of, we came up with the Certified Irrigation System Assessment Program. So we can call it CISA. We've been just calling it ISA. We have different little short terms for it, so we don't say the whole thing. But it's a system that was developed to target a list of recommendations based on objective findings where cost share dollars could be utilized to make measurable improvements. In other words, we're going to use a system evaluation to find where we need to put the cost share dollars, instead of just putting them out there and letting a producer say, hey, I'm going to take that and put it into telemetry, or I'm going to go put it into soil moisture probes. We've seen with cost share programs in the past where deploying $500,000 worth of soil moisture probes, they weren't very looked at, they weren't understood, they didn't result in actual measurable water conservation. So we found that actually improving the well performance, the power plant performance, and the pivot performance was a better way to start. The goal here, and I want to make sure that we have our semantics right, is to achieve better water duty. So water duty is something where we're actually trying to get the water into the root zone and have a measurable economic return on that water used. We're not trying to make the irrigation systems out there more efficient for the sake of making it more efficient. We can use less water when more of it is actually getting into the crop. That's called water duty. We wanted to develop productive feedback for our landowners to help them achieve their optimal irrigation water use. And so we created a system that trains and certifies our professionals. Many of them were already NRCS technical service providers, which means these system assessments, and when I get to the next slide here, these system assessments are not just good for state of Kansas cost share programs. If they're done by some of our certified assessors that also hold the TSP credential, they can then take the same system audit and go out and apply for USDA EQIP and REAP grants. Now some numbers. I was in Denver last week at the 4 States Irrigation Council, giving a presentation on this and a couple of other things, because there's other states that are going out and doing measurable system evaluations like we are, and we have some of the people that are working in Kansas are also working in some of the tri-state projects. But we have arguably 20,000 plus irrigation systems in Kansas. Most of you already know this, 94% of which are center pivot systems. We do have some subsurface irrigation, but that represents about 30 million acres of cropland. When we consider that we have 33 million acres of cropland, and we're trying to get economic return out of that using water, how do we measure how many dollars we're actually getting for every pumped gallon? And we think now, based on the last couple of years of a couple of programs where we've rolled this program out, we're getting a grasp on what that is. Some of you will recall in 2021 to 2023, there was the Rattlesnake NRCS CIG grant that was in concert with the Nature Conservancy and K-State. And there were over 60 plus of these evaluations done at that time, evaluating the performance of a lot of those wells and those pivots. One of the other things that was discovered during that process was applying a lot of the practices that were coming out of the discoveries. We had a couple of our then tech farms that applied these practices, and they were, and I'm going to make this statement, the three operators, I'm not going to mention their names now, the three operators that were applying these practices then were the only ones that stayed 30% under the GMD 5 water banking program while the rest of their neighbors maxed it out. And I'm making that comment to say that, and they had comparable bushels for less water used in that footprint. And we have the documentation for that, and we realized we were onto something. And so as we converted from the Water Tech Farm program into the WISE program, I went back and retroactively required all the participating producers to then have a system evaluation as well. We do not want to be doing pilot projects out on equipment that was antiquated and underperforming, because that just didn't seem like a good fiduciary, intelligent way of spending public taxpayer dollars. So we went out and so far we've done 38 of these evaluations across the WISE network on a lot of different producers' fields across the entire High Plains aquifer. And then when it came time 3 years ago, when Assistant Director Matt Unruh was working with then Director Andy Lyon at the DOC, and they were putting together the High Plains Aquifer RCPP, we realized that we needed some way of baselining a metric in order to document that we were substantially going to have water savings before we did and applied the cost share dollars, and then after we applied those cost share dollars. And you can see up here, so far, as we were targeting the RCPP and rolling out the ITI programs, we have now completed 132 of these system assessments to date. That's really been in the last 18 months across the 5 GMDs. So total, since 2021, we have done 230 plus of these system evaluations, and we have a sample group. Sample group not from any GMD, sample group not from, depending on if they have deep water, shallow water, pocketed water, sands, or loams. We have something here that that's kind of startling to us. I think we all intuitively know this, but we're actually seeing it in the data. Approximately, cumulatively across all of those system evaluations, minus some anomalies that you have to take out because some of them were just disturbingly low and underperforming. We are performing in the state of Kansas. If we look at the state of Kansas as one contiguous operation of irrigation, from this sample set, 58 to 63% efficient, converting water into actual dollars. That means 1 gallon out of the ground equals 1 gallon actually getting into the crop and returning as a return on investment and into a bushel. That's a startling statistic, and this does not include the ramping and the variability of evapotranspiration, like the about 3,500ths to 4,000ths we'll have of evaporative losses in July and August, and many of you know this, and a lot of our science folks have the ability to document this across the growing season. But when we look at the fact that we're not able to evenly distribute water on some kind of average, we're not evenly distributing water across the entire contiguous field, meaning sometimes we're ramping up, we're finding that producers are ramping up and overpressurizing their systems in order to get all of the water out to their outer spans. They're over-applying water on the inner spans. And I'm trying to emphasize a lot of stuff here in a short period of time. But when you're over-applying water in the inner spans and your soil health is what it is and your residue management is what it is, that water does not infiltrate into the root zone. It sits on top of the ground and it evaporates along with the rest of the ET and the losses from the crop. So If this statistic is any indicator of where we're at in the state of Kansas, we're maybe, let's be conservative, let's be optimistic. We're converting 7 gallons of every 10, or 70% of it we're effectively turning into dollars. It's actually worse than that when you actually add ET to the actual losses of the system. So that's the other thing I wanted to point out here is that we had one certified evaluator at the beginning of 2025, Mr. Lee Wheeler, who's a 40-year veteran as an irrigation engineer. We've gotten 4 more people certified under him in just the last year doing these evaluations under the Irrigation Technology Initiative. And we have places with other programs where they're asking and they want us to roll out this same certified process so that there is some kind of baseline to target dollars towards. So these are some of the needs. These are some of the goals of where we're at right now. And with help and support from all of you and state dollars, we want to continue to include and require the CISA on all the state cost share programs. We think it's a great protocol and baseline. We want to establish this baseline to focus cost share dollars into improvements with measurable outcomes using established and uniform protocols. I think the state of the union out there, so to speak, in irrigation kind of is asking for it. We want to continue to fund and develop the training and the certification program. We want to recruit and train and certify more certified evaluators, whether from industry, producers, agency staff, university, graduates, vocational students, etc. We have seen people from all of those backgrounds show an interest and participate in field days so far. The other thing from the other slide I didn't put in there is that we have 5 people that have been participating in training events through the last year that are not yet certified, that are going to continue on with some of our training activities. We have one coming up in February, and they're looking to get certified in the next year. We want to continue to develop efficient onboarding tools and train cost share program administrators. That was a big ramp up that we heard across the GMDs that were participating in the ITI, that figuring out how to get the onboarding data or the information from the wells and from the producers proved a little bit daunting. And then we also have been having conversations with the Water Institute and a couple of our industry partners to develop a pre-screen tool. That jumped too fast. To develop pre-screen tools that can go out and assess uniformity to be able to determine what fields may need more attention sooner than later. We want to go find the pivots that are in more despair, I guess you want to call it, and be able to take broad acres and be able to assess them. And then that is a part of our onboarding screening process so that we know exactly where to ramp up and go send the engineers and the assessors. For the sake of time, there's a deep dive. There's more information here in your slides for you guys to take a look at. There's 4 pillars of the evaluation process. We take a look at the well, we take a look at the pump, we take a look at the irrigation system, and then of course we have to take a look at the irrigation water management strategies that are being employed. We're finding that we have, it's not a surprise to anybody in this chamber that we have aging infrastructure in agriculture across the state of Kansas. It's not just roads and bridges. It's our grain elevators. It's our, some of it's our workforce. If you look at the average age of a crop duster pilot and the average age of somebody with a CDL on a farm, are those still going out and irrigating? You know, crop duster pilots are, the average age I think is like 62 years old in the United States, and the FAA requires airline pilots to retire at 64. So we're up against a couple of things, but the point I was making there is that a lot of our wells are seeing a lot of fatigue. We've seen cracked casings. We're seeing that the water surface levels have dropped. There's a lot of cavitation because the original screens are no longer in the right place. The bowls need adjusted. The pumps need to be adjusted to actually get into the water and not pump air. This is the interesting thing about when a micrometer water meter is spinning, it's measuring air along with water. So if you're pumping air and you have X number of acre feet in your allocation, and you have air also kind of going through there and perturbating with the water, That's not a good thing either, but we are finding that. So I'm just going to skip over some of these things. These are some of the things we go look for, and we have to either we ask our onboarding admins to go get some of the WEMIS data, some of the WWC5 and the Wizard data that's out there through the Division of Water Resources and the KGS. Then we also go out on site and take a menagerie of different pressure tests, and they all end up, after we evaluate everything that's going on, they all get documented into a sheet like this. Now, some of these are the sheets that are used by the NRCS for the EQIP and the REAP programs. When we've evolved ours beyond that in order to incorporate a few more factors, because we're trying to not only assess water duty geared towards collecting the information so we can calculate water duty, but we also want to be able to calculate energy efficiency as well, because there are funds out there federally to help producers upgrade some of their equipment. By the time we're done with this entire testing process and onboarding process, you have something that looks like this. If you haven't seen one, I know at least one, if not two people in here that have seen these. This gives you just an overview shot of how this particular well and this irrigation system is performing, and it gives producers, whether or not they choose to participate in any of our cost shares or take this to go to apply for federal cost share, they can take a list like this, go to their irrigation service provider, and begin to address their own issues. So we're finding that taking public dollars to go out and do these assessments is a great public service. It's a great value added to our producers. We're empowering our irrigators to do more. And I work with producers every day. They'll all swear to you they're doing their best, but they don't like report cards. But then they get a report card and they're like, I knew that. My dad pointed that out in 1975. And they kept going with it. This is a good example of something, and I want to, in the interest of time, I know my presentation kind of started a little later than I was anticipating, but I want you guys to be able to ask some questions here. If you look at the graph in the upper left-hand corner and the graph in the right-hand corner, those blue dots represent pressure gradients. The pressure is ramping up, and then in other spots the pressure is dropping down. And what that is when a center pivot, the outer spans, are either going up in the terrain and the topography is changing, or it's dropping down into the sump of the lowlands. If things are not right in the well, things are not right in the power plant, you don't have your regulators and your orifices correct, then you're getting a pressure, the pressure drops as you're climbing the hill. Those outer spans where you have your most acres are getting underwatered, and then as you climb around, you're overwatering the lowlands where your water's already migrating anyway. So again, that lack of uniformity is where we're actually losing a lot of our dollars. And so when we go in here, a lot of what you're looking at is from autonomous pivot. You can get this information from some of the AgSense data. There's a lot of telemetry units out there that'll give you this. But when we begin to dial in a machine before and after, and we go in and we upgrade some things using this evaluation, you'll see on the right side what a more uniform gradient of pressures look like on the end tower. And when you have that more uniform gradient of pressures, they're not spiking as high and they're not dropping as low, you're getting more uniform water applied. And by that, that means you're actually converting water into real dollars. You're not just losing it to other processes. And that's what our target, that's what our goal is, especially as producers are operating inside of LEMAs, MIFAs, WCAs, whatever it may be. We want them to get equal amount of financial value out of pumping less water. And that comes down to, I don't like to use the word efficiency, that just comes down to better performance. I'll equate this and then I'll go to the next slide. It gets into a couple other things. I had to go, I'm 50 now. Some of you are like, I'm a young buck, and some of you are like, you're old, Wes. But you know, you sit down with the doctor when you're 50 and they start giving you different tests and they start looking at different things. And they're like, we need to talk about your diet, and we need to talk about a lot of things, and you need to get a Fitbit, and you need to check your steps and how much cardio you're getting. That is the same kind of conversation that we're having with producers out there. It's the same one. We saw some fourth quarter football last night. It's conditioning yourself so you can play fourth quarter football. And when we up the performance of our center pivots, it actually has a big bearing for the state of Kansas in food and water security type of applications. When it comes down to the emerging markets and competition that's developing right here in the Western Hemisphere. I'm not going to go down through all the findings, but these are things that you all can read in your own time. These are some of the findings and recommendations that Mr. Wheeler and the rest of the evaluators have aggregated together on your behalf, on the behalf of producers. We're going to try to put together some videos and some workshops. In fact, they just had a workshop out in Colby last week when I was at Four States Irrigation Council, where Jack Polifka, one of the certified evaluators, was teaching producers about some of these things that they can go out and measure themselves. And then I kind of want to get to some conclusions here and give you guys, there's quite a bit of them, right? We've been busy. And every bit of these are coming from the trenches, long days, sweating, measuring, watching things break. But at the end of the day, if we're delivering water to the root zone like we're supposed to, we're getting more of it there, and this is a AquaSpy soil moisture probe, it's showing the actual water in the root zone. So when you see kind of that EKG graph, that's actually showing the water that's infiltrated and how deep it's gone into the root zone. And that green band is the performance and the demand by the plant as it goes through its growth stages, saying you need to keep water within this margin. If the graph goes above the green band, that means you're over applying water and you're losing it. If you go below that green band, that means you're starving your plant. I've seen these same graphs on a lot of our other fields. They're either way above the green line or they're way under it, depending on where you have the probe. Sometimes if it's in the inner spans, it's just always at field capacity, and the outer spans are always starving for reasons I mentioned before. And the goal is this. We want to achieve better water duty while conserving water resources. Get more water into the root zone and get it used by the crop. We use less water when each drop does more. And I'm just reiterating myself here, more economic return for every drop of water used is a win-win. And this is what we're shooting for, to keep our economy vital, to help our producers compete and perform, and upgrade some very, very old and aging equipment that's out there so that we can continue to be competitive in the state of Kansas. So with that, I'll welcome some questions or critique or jokes.
That was a lot to absorb. I want to point out something. You're talking about and I use the term efficient far too often, but you're talking about trying to maximize the output that we can get for the water that we put in. And that varies due to soil type, terrain. You can have a center pivot that's entirely flat. You can have one with quite a difference in elevations. Makes it a challenge. I've got one system that has 6 wells that goes to one pivot. To try to balance all those so that one's not working harder than the others. Lee spent an entire day at our farm working on 2 pivots and 8 wells. It's amazing the detail they get into, but it's also the variability. You go to another area of the state and it's going to be an entirely different calculation. You're just trying to maximize for that particular location the best absolute use of that water. Is that close?
That's exactly it. And you're a producer as well as the chair of this committee, and I guess I would ask, are you feeling or are you hearing that the producers in your area are being served well by this process? And we welcome feedback.
I would say absolutely. I believe Lee had done around 90 pivots, mostly in the GMD1, but some up into 4 and 3, I believe. Everybody that has done the process has said it's a very worthwhile thing. If you can find some small thing, we found a booster pump that the pump was worn more than we'd anticipated. We weren't getting the benefit from it. With the Lee's engineering data, I go to NRCS and they'll cost share on replacing that pump and putting a variable frequency drive on so that we can maintain the exact pressure that we want anywhere within that system. So it's been highly beneficial. So I think initially I paid Lee $3,500. Once the RCP grant didn't happen and you come in with the ITI money, then I got reimbursed on that. But he found basically for about a $8,000 replacement on that pump, I can save $14,000 a year. And honestly, our water distribution was really good, but we can save on the energy side of things. Anything I can do on my farm, because my family eats the net. It's the difference between revenues and expenses. It's not always maximizing the most crop out there. But no, I've been very happy with what I've seen. I want to know kind of what the time frame on this ITI money is. Do we think we can keep that around for a few years?
I don't have the answers to that. That's going to be a question for Director Frost, more so than me. But I could find out, and either Director Owen can report back or I could report back on that. We're trying to ask for dollars from the state anywhere we can to put into this. We think it's a worthy cause, not only doing the system assessments and then doing the targeted upgrades and then doing the post assessments. What we really need are dollars and more hands on deck. And we've been talking to all of our industry partners, Water Institute, K-State. There's a lot of extra data that we're putting down whole with the Kansas Geological Survey and Brownie Wilson, trying to put up what we call a water resiliency network in addition to the index well system that can give us some geotechnical data on how fast some of these regions are responding and rebounding from drawdown, mid-season drawdown. It just is a matter, the other thing we're trying to do is we have some of our seasoned people like Mr. Wheeler. I'm actually amazed that he still gets out in the field at his, I don't want to say at his age, but he's rare. And we're trying to take and soak all of his brain into other people and get them out there and get them trained so we can perpetuate this knowledge to the next generation. Because without it, we're going to have a great loss. Our tribal knowledge is going to go away. So we're also, you just can't have training days without dollars to pay somebody. But we're up against a lot of those financial boundaries, time boundaries, especially with the federal freeze on the project funds that really, we are planning on rolling this out for the next 5 years. I hear that there's a new RCPP in the works, but I'm not sure what that looks like, and I'm not sure if they're planning to roll forward with this system evaluation process or not. I've heard some producers say, we don't want system evaluations, we just want easy access to money. Well, we've done that before, and it's difficult to come back and say that it's resulting in measurable conserved water. And I think that the public and that the people of Kansas deserve more for the dollar that's being invested. And more importantly, Kansas irrigation, Kansas farming has to compete into the 21st century. Some of you know this, I left a civil engineering career and came out and spent 14 years in vocational ed teaching agriculture, precision agriculture, working on workforce development. As there's becoming less and less people in agriculture, they have to do more and more things. So we have to employ machines and software and do more with less. The sooner we can get center pivots across Kansas behaving like the thermostat on our walls, and that's what the VFD and the electric wells give us, is that you can set a parameter the way you want it and walk away, not spend all day going out doing the way I grew up irrigating, you know. We'd go do 2-a-day football, we'd go to morning session, we'd go lay irrigation pipe in between, then we'd go back. We knew how to play some fourth quarter football. We don't need to irrigate like that anymore, nor do we have people that want to do that kind of work. They're just not available. They're not out there. So time is of the essence. And I appreciate you all inviting me here to kind of present on this. Yeah, any other questions, or I'm not sure where we're at with time? Yes, sir.
Representative Blex has a question first, and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Is the cost share values, and I suppose they vary, is that 50-50, 75-25, you know, because sometimes as a producer, I evaluate the amount of dollars I'm going to have to put in a given year over long term, and when commodity prices may be low, I may delay that. So is a cost share adequate at this point with to get people enticed to sign up for it?
It was better than that. We were paying producers $500 to bring in their paperwork, paying for their system evaluations in full, and then 75 to 100% coverage on cost share to make the improvements.
75%, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you give us just a ballpark picture here? You know, I appreciate your presentation and what's being done and the improvements of water efficiency, but with the available technology we have today, do we have the information and technology, if it were all implemented, to stop the decline in the Ogallala aquifer or not?
That's a big question, and a lot of that's over my pay grade. Some of that I'm not in a position to answer for you right now, but I can get information. There are areas of decline in our aquifer that I know that we can absolutely stop. And I think that's where the Q-stable metric is coming in, that the KGS has developed, that as we develop priority areas, and Q-stable is developed in those priority areas, some of those are absolutely sustainable. I think there are areas that have long already surpassed sustainability. Just from things I'm hearing, I would defer to somebody at Division of Water Resources or KGS on that, but I could get more information for you. It's variable, like Representative Minix was saying. It's variable based upon where you're at and where you're irrigating.
Could I ask one more question then? What you're telling us that this is not uniform across the state, and so how do we develop public policy that directs the resources and the information and technology to those areas where we can make a significant difference?
I think, first of all, the Q-stable evaluation is critical because that analyzes actually the actual available water that's in the aquifer and in the High Plains network. That's a metric right there that can be used to target dollars. Number two, if we could, as we're working with different industry partners as well as K-State and the Water Institute to develop a metric that we can go out and use satellite imagery to determine where we might have more severe need for improvements, then we could also come back and say, hey, we have these regions that we know for a fact are not distributing water adequately, and this is where we need to go in and do a comprehensive set of system evaluations and maybe put more dollars into those targeted areas. So there are tools that are already in place and tools that are currently in development that I think are going to be able to answer those questions soon. I agree with you. It's not a matter of putting blanket dollars across the entire High Plains aquifer or the state of Kansas, because there's wells that are not performing well way outside the High Plains aquifer. We see them even in eastern Kansas and northern Kansas. We would like to see this process at some point done on every single well in Kansas as a contiguous network. It's just a matter of putting dollars where we do know we need them today, I guess. I hope I'm answering your question. I may not be.
Yes, thank you very much.
Anybody else? Representative White.
Thank you, Wes. Really good presentation. Good to see you. How does a young person become a disciple of Lee Wheeler? I don't know an easier or harder way of saying that. Is there a class? Is there a school? Or give some direction to the young people out there.
Well, first, to young people, so not producers. Right now, a lot of our irrigation industry has been under his tutelage. We've had a lot of producers that have worked with him kind of as a mentor as well as a technical consultant. We need to host more classes, and we need to host more public-facing. I know that he had presented at where I used to teach at Fort Hays Tech when Jack Polifica took over the program. I know he had gone in and talked to a couple of those two-year kids at that point. But one of the things we're working on this year, and I apologize we didn't get it rolled out last year, is we're going to go out and make a video series that, first of all, promotes this system evaluation process, like a 2-minute video that we'll be able to put on different agency websites as well as the GMD websites promoting what this is. Number two, we're going to capture all of those, the onboarding and all of those recommendations lists that I have in here bolted out. We're going to capture him on video teaching and demonstrating all that, not only for producers, but then it becomes a living archive that people can refer to in the future, including young people, including the universities or vocational. They can pull up that, maybe that series and say, these are all things that we can all study and utilize. So at this point, that's our strategy, is it's do more workshops, continue to train the future generation of trainers, and then capture a set of videos at the top of the game, because we're all out in the field. So we have all kinds of footage opportunities, I guess you would want to say, actually showing boots on the ground, this knob, this widget, this setting, this pressure.
May I continue? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was, how do they get certified? Is it Hayes only, or can they? I mean, it's a small, 5 others are still in training and plan to certify in 2026. And how many should be certified in this area?
I think if we're going to target 20,000 wells and we've only done 200 in 5 years, we can do the math. We should have been busy 20 years ago.
Right.
It's not a matter, anybody is welcome to come and participate in the classes that we have. We haven't been openly promoting them. It's been kind of word of mouth. But any young person, anybody who's serious about this, that really wants to embark in the training, it is available to them. They could get in contact with me, and we can put them on the roster for training. The other part of that is we are using our High Plains Aquifer dollars that are currently allotted to us from the Kansas Water Plan. The KWO is the only one that's been sponsoring the training so far. So we need more dollars across a bigger length of time in order to stand up this program too. That's another part of it.
Thank you.
You know, as we grow up, if you're in 4-H, I think the motto is to make the best better. If you're a Boy Scout, it's be prepared, those types of things. The technology is there. What we need is dollars to apply some of this technology to different areas. Even if there's some areas that the GMDs determine are a high priority, but they can't quite get them to Q stable, they can at least extend the life of that aquifer in that area. I think anything that we're extending the life on is an improvement. And we're seeing a lot of better or similar economics coming from areas with far reduced water usage. I look at GMD, well, the Sheridan 6 people, they're a prime example, and the WCA in Wichita County. I have a really strong interest personally in extending the funding for this, whether it's called ITI or RCPP funding, wherever the money comes from. The program is absolutely beneficial. It's how we can, as a public body, fund this type of endeavor. But I've seen the impact of it, and I've heard from even the producers in GMD3 are getting excited about this. We need to expand more into that area. It's been generally in GMD1 and 4, but we've got a long ways to go to expand this program. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Wes.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
At this time, we'll have William Carr from the, what is it, Division of Water within? Bureau of Water. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee. My name's William Carr. I'm the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Water at the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. I appreciate this opportunity to kind of give you an update of what the Bureau is doing right now. And as soon as we get this up, I'll start some slides. We've had some changes, faces and positions lately. There's nothing like, equipment not acting like you should, like you think it should, to erode confidence. But there we go. So wanted to kind of go over what the new faces, new positions are. On the Division of Environment at KDHE, we of course have a new Division Director, Kate Gleason, who took over for Leo Henning when he retired in September. We have a new Deputy Division Director, who's Joe Dahm, who took over for Kate when she took over for Leo. For the Bureau of Water, one of the bureaus under the Division of Environment, of course, I am the new Bureau Director, William Carr. I've worked for KDHE for 32 years now. Started out about 8 years at the KDHE laboratories and radiochemistry laboratory. Started working for Bureau of Water in 2002. I was the Assistant Bureau Director until Leo left. I took Leo's place when he retired in July. We're currently in the hiring process for that Assistant Director. I believe the position is posted. I believe it closes next week. We also have a new Public Water Supply Section Chief, Rob Gavin, who took over for Kathy Tucker-Vogel, who retired in September last year. We have two other sections in the Bureau of Water that actually aren't new faces, but I wanted to acknowledge that those sections exist. Our water monitoring, assessment, and science section chief is Tony Stahl, and our wastewater, stormwater, permitting, and compliance section chief is Shelley Shores. So I want to take a few minutes and kind of tell the committee what the scope of programs in Bureau of Water. I'm assuming not everyone understands what all we do, so I want to quickly go through this. We have two units that are directly under administration, directly under the Bureau Director, and that first one is the Geology and Well Technology Unit. They regulate underground injection control wells used for getting waste. They also regulate water well construction, water well contractor licensure, and also underground hydrocarbon storage. These are caverns, salt caverns that are created that store liquid petroleum gas and natural gas. The other unit directly under administration is the Policy Planning and Standards Unit. This unit develops what we call total maximum daily loads for surface waters. We develop documents that pretty much determine how much of a pollutant can be discharged into a stream, and that stream still meet the water quality use or the water use of that particular body. The unit also does water quality regulations. We update those. We have to every 3 years by federal regulation. And that unit also determines water quality impairments. Every 2 years, we do a list that shows the impairments of rivers, streams, lakes for water quality. And that unit compiles that list and evaluates, determines whether they're impaired. Our section for the water monitoring, assessment, and science, this section is really used, the bulk of their work is going out and doing the monitoring, collecting the water samples throughout the entire state of Kansas. We have a very extensive stream monitoring network. We collect lake samples. This unit goes out and collects those samples, evaluates the data that comes back from our labs, and assesses what those values of that monitoring means for those water bodies. The two remaining sections, the largest sections in the Bureau, is the public water supply section. The first one is the public water supply section, which handles drinking water compliance issues. We also have a unit there that's for capacity development for municipalities, utilities, drinking water utilities, enforcement. That capacity development is more of a technical assistance type program. We also have an infrastructure financing. We have a drinking water state revolving fund that's housed under that section. Of course, engineering and permits unit that reviews plans and specs for drinking water infrastructure projects and also issues permits for drinking water infrastructure. And also that section oversees drinking water operator certification process. Now, we pretty much have a kind of a mirror on the wastewater side that has a lot of these same types of units. So the wastewater and stormwater, we of course have engineering permits that review plans and specs for wastewater infrastructure and permits the discharge from those infrastructure. We have a unit that oversees wastewater compliance and evaluates the data from the compliance measurements we take. We have technical assistance and enforcement unit. Also, that wastewater section has a infrastructure unit for the wastewater state revolving fund. Sometimes we call that the Clean Water State Revolving Fund because it's patterned under the Clean Water Act. And they also have the operator certification program for municipal wastewater operators. So I wanted to kind of take a little time to let you know what's on the horizon for regulations in Bureau of Water. And we have a couple of different drivers for what determines when we update regulations. First driver is federal, and on this slide here it shows these are all drinking water federal regulations that have passed recently. The first two deal with lead and copper. EPA passed a lead copper rule revision in 2021. A couple of years later, they decided, yeah, that could use some improvement. They passed another lead copper rule improvements rule in 2023 that changed some of the previous revisions rule. Both of those rules are in effect because they cover different areas. We have to, as a state, because we're a primacy agency for EPA, we have to adopt those regulations to incorporate those lead copper regulations, those federal regulations, into state regulations. Same thing with consumer confidence rule. It's really an update. There's always been a consumer, well, not always. There's been a consumer confidence rule for quite a while. It was recently updated in 2024. That rule requires that municipal water systems or public water supply systems provide reports to their users about the water quality that they're providing. This new rule update from EPA, it requires some more specific information what each of these reports have to do, and also requires how they're presented to users depending on the population of the water system. Finally, and probably the biggest one that's happened in recent couple of years, is the PFAS rule. And that was implemented in 2024 on the federal level. I have a slide to talk about that all by itself for later, so we'll get into that. So we have these federal rules that we have to create state regulations or amend our state regulations to incorporate those requirements and those are all public drinking water. However, on the state side, we also have regulations in play that aren't influenced by changes in federal law. The first one there is underground injection control fees. Last year, or maybe it was the year before, last session, there was a statute change that gave us authority to collect fees on that regulatory program. We're actually almost through with the administrative process of completing those regulations. We have a public hearing in March for that. We've just started the administrative process for extending the permit term period for wastewater permits. Last legislative session, there was a statute that changed the maximum term length from 5 years to 10 years. We have to change the regulations to catch up with that statute change. We also on the works, it's about halfway through the administrative process. There's a drinking water line extension and replacement regulation package. This regulation package will allow certain municipal public water supply systems that have adequate engineering staff to review and approve their own drinking water line extensions and replacement projects instead of sending them to KDHE for our review. The next one on the list there is wastewater fees. This is something that we're in the early stages of planning for. The wastewater program, those permit fees are annually. The last time those rates were adjusted was 1996, so it's time that we looked at those again and made some adjustments. And I guess newest on the list, and this is really pre-planning stage, is water reuse. And I believe I'll be here on Thursday to provide testimony on a statute change that is related to these water reuse regulations. So that's kind of what's going on the regulation side for Bureau of Water. Now I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about water quality, specifically water quality on public water supply systems that we regulate. And before I started kind of getting into the details of the types of water quality issues we have, I wanted to present to the committee that we're actually in pretty good shape. This graph here shows that a percentage of the population served by public water supply systems in Kansas, at least 95%, and that graph is over 2 years, at least 95% of the population served in Kansas complies with all health-based standards, regulations. That in the last year, that kind of spiked up to about to 98, but it's been pretty consistent. We're pretty proud of that. We think that Kansas has a good program to protect public health when public water supply is concerned. So let's kind of talk about the actual, what kind of concerns we're seeing in public water supplies. And I've broken out slides between source water types. The first one we're talking about is groundwater. There's a few in there, which you can see from the graph there at the top of the list. Nitrate's our biggest concern. And what's the number there in parentheses represents the number of public water supply systems that were out of compliance with that contaminant. And this is over the last 4 years. So over the last 4 years, one time or another, we had 33 different public water supplies out of compliance with nitrate. The little picture there on the slide kind of shows a heat map of where nitrate concerns are. Actually, it's pretty much everywhere in the state, although from this graph, it looks like, southeast Kansas is not showing any issues with that right now. The next next biggest problem we have is really biological, E. coli contamination. Now, we've had 10 systems over the last 4 years that have been out of compliance with that. The unique thing with E. coli contamination is it's typically, rarely, never part of a question of the source water. Usually this contamination gets in through a distribution system failure, or the source water or the processes for producing that drinking water have some sanitary conditions that introduce bacteria into the process. I can tell you, for each one of these 10 systems, it was a one-time thing. Not one of them ever repeated it over the last 4 years. So those problems are pretty quick to be found and can be resolved fairly quick also. The remaining contaminants, we're not having a lot of issues, but they're still showing up. Arsenic, we have 3 public water supply systems over the last 4 years that are out of compliance. Combined uranium, another 3, and combined radium. Combined uranium and radium are considered radiological contaminants. Carbon tetrachloride is 2 systems, and selenium's 2 systems, and we have 1 system that is out of compliance with fluoride, maximum contaminant levels. I want to kind of go over the reason why I kind of split up groundwater and surface water. You'll see on the next slide when we talk about surface water that the contaminants are different. And that has a lot to do, because the source water, surface water is very different. It also has a little bit to do with the treatment requirements between groundwater and surface water. I just wanted to make sure the committee understood that groundwater, if when we initially start groundwater, we'll do a scan of all the contaminants we're concerned with. If something shows up out of compliance, then they, of course, have to treat that or find another water source. But assuming that all that water is fine, there's not any regulated contaminants in that, the minimum treatment we have for drinking water, groundwater sources, is disinfection. So it's a treatment to, take care of pathogens, take care of bacteriological concerns. It is not a treatment that removes contaminants. So that's why, you see a lot of groundwater sources in small systems. The treatment's a lot cheaper because it's less complex, assuming that you don't have these contaminants you have to treat for. You're just disinfecting the water. So we'll move to surface water. And I want to point out, the top 2 contaminants that we've seen over the last 4 years aren't necessarily contaminants that are in the source water, that are in the river or whatnot. These haloacetic acids, we have 38 systems in the last 4 years, and total trihalomethanes, 31 systems. Now, those 2 contaminants are actually a group of several different compounds. So it's just not one compound you're doing analysis for, you're doing for a group of them. These compounds, like I say, typically aren't in the source water, and they're usually found only in surface water. We have found some in groundwater sources, but they happen mainly in the distribution systems. After the source water has been treated and it goes out in the distribution, we of course require disinfection of that when it goes into the distribution system. Because surface water has a higher carbon content in the water, and all that carbon is not removed through the treatment process, but the carbon that remains interacts with the disinfectants that you use to make sure that the distribution system meets minimum requirements. And the longer they set and the higher concentration of carbon you have in that, you create these contaminants, these HA5s and TTHMs. That's the biggest problem we're seeing in surface water plants. And that's a factor of, I say that it's not in the source water, but you really have to either start taking more of the carbon out during your treatment process, or find a different way to disinfect or to still meet minimum requirements and not create these contaminants. The other issues we've seen over the last 4 years, they're not that prevalent. We have 2 systems that had MCA violations for bromate, one for gross alpha, which is a radiological contaminant. It's actually not a single contaminant. It's a group of contaminants that produce radiation. And then one system that was out of compliance for chlorate. Again, want to point out one of the reasons you see different types of contaminants is that surface water, the minimum treatment required for any surface water does require you to remove constituents from that water through filtration and other treatment processes. So they're very different treatment objectives, treatment requirements between those 2 sources. So I said we're going to talk about PFAS. PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Now, I have a chemistry degree. I try to avoid saying that name any chance I get because I'll screw it up. So I'm going to call it's PFAS. But I want the committee to understand that it's not just, when we say PFAS, it's not just one compound. It's a group of many, many compounds that are these types of substances. So EPA 2024 passed a rule that regulated 6 of those compounds, 6 different PFAS compounds. However, they set maximum contaminant levels for them. In May of 2025, under new administration, EPA released a press release indicating that they intended to issue a new rule for PFAS that took away 4 of those contaminants, that there would only be 2 that are going to be regulated. And they would also extend the compliance period, or when systems had to be in compliance with those MCLs. Now, I mention that because I have not seen, I have no doubts that this will happen. I have not seen any language. I don't believe EPA has released any draft language for this new rule. So that means the 2024 rule is still fully in effect until they do that. So there's some uncertainty there. How soon will they get this done? Will we be looking at 6 contaminants? Will we be looking at 2 contaminants? The current rule, and I don't believe EPA has announced that they're going to change this, is that we have to do initial monitoring for all of the public water supply systems by April 2027. And so there's lots of scrambling to get this done. These are complex monitoring analysis processes that our lab does. Now, systems have to comply with this new standard by April 2029. However, in the EPA announcement, this is one thing that they said they were going to move back that compliance date to 2031. Again, I don't know when that's going to happen. I certainly believe it's going to happen, but until it does, the compliance date is April 29. As mentioned, KDHE labs, we started doing the analysis for these PFAS substances last month. We do know that there's PFAS out there. It doesn't look like there's a lot of it, but EPA did some previous monitoring of systems in Kansas through a program and found 5 different drinking water utilities that had hits for the 2 compounds that are going to be regulated, or that we're anticipated are going to be the 2 that are regulated. So it's out there. It kind of shows up unexpectedly. We don't always know what the source is when we find that. Next, reuse regulations. Like I said, I think I'll be talking to the committee again about a statute that discusses or instructs KDHE to develop these. This is a complex issue. Reuse, there's many ways to do it, more than one way to do it, many complications. And there's no standards. For every other standard we have on drinking water supplies, the federal government has done research, has done risk studies, has done pilot tests and research to determine what those levels should be and the health risks associated with them. The federal government hasn't done that for reuse, so it's up to the states to do that sort of research and whatnot. And we don't have the capacity to do that research right now. But kind of on a higher level, issues with direct potable reuse concern is that there's no dilution. Last week, Gary Jansen was here from Wichita. He showed a picture that, indirect potable reuse is pretty much happening anywhere. Anybody that uses water off of a river is probably downstream of someone that's discharged into that river. And that works to some degree because there's some dilution. You have new water coming into that river, and the contaminants of concern, the pollutants of concern, are being diluted down to levels that are either treatable or are below health concerns. So there's none of that in direct potable reuse. We've got to figure out, what are the risks of and what kind of standards we need to set to make sure we account for that there's no dilution of those contaminants. It will require additional treatment before your regular drinking water treatment. And there's another thing that we're not sure how we're going to handle, but in wastewater, and there's no dilution, there's a greater concentration of unknown and unregulated contaminants. So, it's not that we have the authority to regulate these things, but we know there's concerns. It's just like PFAS was unregulated until 2024. There's always concern. You've heard about microplastics. You've heard about pharmaceuticals in the drinking water supply. Those sort of things aren't regulated, but they're going to be more concentrated in wastewater. And we've got to figure out what's the risk to health for using that. Indirect potable reuse concerns, right now, it's in our mind, we really have to look at the capacity, the treatment capacity and types of the existing drinking water systems. And again, that's part of the reason why I pointed out, the contamination difference between drinking from groundwater and surface water is that, the groundwater treatment requirements at minimum don't require taking contaminants out, whereas surface water treatment does. And then the biggest thing is not necessarily, it'll be a cost for KDHE to make sure we're accessing the right research and developing the right standards, but the cost is really on the systems. It is expensive to build these new advanced treatment systems for drinking water. And not only to build them, to maintain and operate them. So this is not something that will come cheap to the systems that want to do it. I'm going to spend the last couple of slides talking about one of my biggest concerns. Any chance I get, I talk about funding concerns we have. I kind of wanted to point out historically for the Bureau of Water, and I'll admit we've had it good for the last several years. We've had a variety of funding sources, pretty diverse. On the public water supply side, we have, there's a state public water supply fee fund that is based off retail use. It's retail users pay that to utilities. Utilities pay it to us. We get about $200,000 a year off of that fee fund. For drinking water, the state revolving fund has a set aside. So I mentioned, our state revolving fund, we get federal grants, and we take those grants and we loan that money out. However, federal rules allow a certain percentage of those federal grants that we can take off the top and not use for SRF purposes. Specifically, we can use them for administering drinking water, public water supply supervision programs. And we do. That is probably our main source of funding for the public water supply system. And right now, especially over the last 5 years, we've had between $2 and $3 million available to us to fund those programs from that source. We also have, through the state revolving fund, this is a state fee, but we charge a fee. It's a very small component of the interest rate on outstanding balances of loans. We collect that fee, and we're allowed to use that fee for, of course, the SRF programs, but we're allowed to also use it for the public drinking water regulatory program. And we do that. We spend about $1 million a year from that fee fund on public water supply. Then we also get what we call a categorical grant, the Public Water Supply Supervision Grant. It's been about $1.3 million for a long time. On the wastewater side, again, we have another categorical grant. It's called Section 106 grant. That Section 106 references the Clean Water Act, which section of the Clean Water Act that applies to. That's also considered a categorical grant. We get from federal government about $2.4 million a year to maintain those programs. We have a state fee, the wastewater permit fees. That's annual fee. We collect about $600,000 from that. I mentioned earlier, we are working on planning on revising those regulations to increase those fees. We also get money from State General Fund. We get about $120,000 a year. And like the public water supply section, the wastewater state revolving fund also has a fee fund that has provided between $2 and $3 million to the regulatory programs annually. So that's pretty good. We've felt pretty good about our historical funding. But we're seeing a physical cliff, and it's going to be happening pretty soon. And this physical cliff starts with the state revolving fund programs. And it can be seen first with the drinking water. As I mentioned, that we could take part of that drinking water federal money for the SRF programs and use it to administer the public water supply regulatory program. You can't do that on the clean water side, but you can on the drinking water. The graph here, there's a lot of information, but roughly that top graph there shows what our base appropriations. Now, we get a base appropriation every year. 2021, we consider a normal year. You know, clean water got a little over $14 million, drinking water got a little over $12 million. You see 22, 23, 24, it started creeping down. To 24, it got about half of what we considered a normal year. 25, it went back up to a normal year. And then 26, which of course has not been appropriated yet, but the Senate and House have passed bills for these levels. I don't have all the details there, but from preliminary results, it looks like we're going to be, the SRF program for drinking water and wastewater are going to be about 42% of what we would consider a normal year. The reason why those dip is for congressional directed spending or earmarks. So what Congress has done over the last 5 years is that most of the wastewater infrastructure projects that they wanted to provide earmarks for, they have taken that money off the SRF appropriations. Whether the state, and that affects all the states, whether the state gets one of those earmarks or not. And so that's where you can see the dip there. The reason that we went back up to normal in 2025 is there were no earmarks taken off. 2025 on the federal level was done by a year-long continuing resolution. They couldn't repeat the same earmarks they did for the previous year, and so the SRF levels went up, and it went all to the state SRF programs. Again, the reason this makes a difference is because administrative costs on the drinking water side are directly related to this SRF program. Now, the reason that the SRF programs, and actually, frankly, the administrative programs haven't suffered for this so long, that bottom part of the graph, and I tried to kind of line up the years together, that bottom part of the graph is supplemental funding we got from the infrastructure or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was passed in 22. It was a 5-year block of funding that significantly provided more federal money to the SRF programs. Now, you notice the scales on the bottom graph are different than the top. We actually got more than what we consider a normal year as supplemental funds. So even though the annual appropriation was down, we still had this ramp up from the Infrastructure Act, and so we didn't really feel the pinch from this. As I mentioned, this is a 5-year deal for the Infrastructure Act. Yeah, I must have timed out again. So there's no Infrastructure Act funding in 2027. And I've seen nothing, no motivation or inkling from Congress that they were going to do another Infrastructure Act. So base appropriations have declined by at least 50%. We think that we see no indication that earmarks are going to stop. So we assume that they're going to be at the same level, if not more, possibly even canceling SRF out. We don't know. But that represents an 80% cut in federal funds for infrastructure for the SRF programs, which also means an 80% cut in the public water supply administration. Whereas, we have about $2.7 million available to us through that source, we're going to have $500,000 a year available to that source, or less if earmarks take a bigger hold. This is very worrisome. So again, kind of federal funding, the two categorical grants I mentioned, Public Water Supply Supervision Grant, the Section 106 grant, they've been flat for about 15 years. Although the last 2 years, we've seen a tick down. It's actually getting a little bit lower. We expect that trend will continue. It might continue to zero, we don't know. But program costs have increased over that 15 years. And it's really through the SRF programs that have taken up the slack for those increased costs. For 2026, the president's budget came through. The recommendation was to zero out those categorical grants. That would be quite difficult, devastating to our regulatory programs. Also indicated an 80% cut to SRF programs. Now, of course, that didn't happen for federal fiscal year 25. It doesn't look like it's going to happen for 26. But earmarks continue to erode the SRF appropriation. And we're thinking we can only bet on about $500,000 annually to be able to provide to the public water supply regulation program. On the state funding, those two fee funds from the SRF, state fee funds from the SRF program, we've actually been oversubscribed and overspending. We had some reserves built up, and we're getting to the point where we've used those reserves, and it's looking like we only have about $500,000 a year that we'll be able to use for the regulatory programs from that source. So to kind of, I was trying to think of a way to make it, to kind of compare historical to what we think the future is. Couldn't do that without making a really busy slide here. But in short, Public Water Supply Fund, 200,000. That's we don't expect that to change. State revolving fund set-asides, where we're getting 2 to 3 million. Now we're thinking we're only getting 500,000. The state revolving fee fund, we've been able to use about $1 million a year. We think that's going to be reduced to 500,000. The supervision grant, right now, it's like I say, it's ticking down lower. It'll be less than 1.3 million, I think, for 26. But future levels are uncertain. I think it's probably safe to fear that we're on a glide path to zero. So I don't think we can depend on those federal funds for too much longer. Wastewater program, sort of the same story. That Section 106, the categorical grant, we don't know if that's going to be funded at levels or if that's on a glide path to zero. The wastewater permit fees, about 600,000. We are looking at ways to increase those fees through regulation change. We get the $120,000 state general fund. I hope that stays stable, but maybe the committee has better ideas of whether that will shrink for us also. And then the state revolving fee fund, which is usually committing $2 to $3 million a year to the regulatory program, down to about 500,000. So that is probably the worst way to end a presentation on that downer there, but these are the type of things that kind of interfere with my sleep at night, and I wanted to make sure the committee was aware of that. Mr. Chair, I would be happy to stand for any questions if you have any, or the committee members.
Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. It's so interesting to me. Of course, in Johnson County, we're more quality of water than quantity, so this always gets my attention. But on the lead and copper rule, do you know where Kansas is at as far as replacement versus what's left, and what is the time frame we have to finish that?
So I don't have the numbers committed to history or to memory. I do know that the last, after one of the original, revision federal rule required everybody to send in inventories of their lead service lines, right? Now, we had estimates before that happened that were higher. When the information actually came in, they were a lot lower than we thought it would be. However, there are still a lot of unknowns in that inventory, so we still have a lot of work to do. I don't know those numbers. It's better than we thought it would be. But the rule says that you have to replace those lines within the lead service lines or any unknowns if you don't determine what the source, what their material is, within 10 years. And I believe that, it should be 34 then when all the service lines have to be replaced.
Okay, can I keep going? Okay, I have two more questions for you. Drinking water violations, surface and groundwater. You had mentioned the nitrates, E. coli, arsenic is a one-time thing that gets resolved quickly.
E. coli, not the.
Oh, just the, okay. So how often do you actually test these water systems, and does it cover everyone?
Yes, it depends, you know, what the value was the last time we tested. So especially for groundwater systems, I mean, for nitrate, the maximum contaminant level is 10. So if they had less than 1, then they're on a reduced monitoring requirement. They might not have to monitor again for 3, 6, or 9 years. Someone that's higher has to monitor more frequently, to whether if they're up against the MCL, they have to monitor quarterly. So it really depends on what the level is.
Okay. And my last question is about PFAS. I mean, everybody's biggest fear, right? Now, you said there's a new rule that will remove 4 PFAS compounds. I thought they were forever chemicals. They can actually be removed?
No, what I meant to convey was that the announcement that EPA would remove regulation for 4
Gotcha.
compounds.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so only 2 compounds were regulated.
Gotcha. So Olathe is piloting that supercritical water oxidation program. I'm hoping this is a solution that helps us get to the bottom of getting these out of our water.
That is on the wastewater side. I believe that project has to deal with biosolids on the wastewater side. But yes, that is a big concern on the wastewater side of things. There's no regulatory framework for biosolids right now from EPA, so we're not sure what's in store. But yes, getting them out of our rivers and streams would be very beneficial.
Representative Droege. Okay, Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, William. This was a great presentation, and I have more questions than I should probably ask. But I think to get started, I think the main thing that I have concerns around, I think probably like you, is the funding side of this, and you know, I think we're going to continue to have issues with contaminants and concerns around public water supply, and how do we make sure that that is funded into the future, especially as we see the earmarks at the federal level. So something I've kind of been thinking about is, you know, what if we were to create a state level revolving loan fund that operates similarly to the federally funded revolving loan fund? I guess I'm wondering, have you seen other states do something like that? Do you feel like that model would work in Kansas? Is that a potential solution to this problem?
I personally like that idea. A lot of my experience has been with the state revolving fund, and on the federal level, they've gotten harder to use. I would like to see a state revolving fund that is not as complicated to use as the federal level. So I think the desire is there, especially with the smaller systems in Kansas that can't navigate all those complexities. Will that be the solution? It depends on how big it is. I doubt that we can start a state-level SRF fund to meet all the demand. But I think starting would help and would provide some relief to the public water supply systems that use it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, you know, it's hard to find the silver bullet, but I'm hoping, you know, we have the grant programs with 2302, and if we can extend those at some point and layer in low interest loans, maybe with all of that together, we can start to really chip away at it. And then a couple other technical questions. So you said for the drinking water systems, for the compliance issues you listed, that it was over the last 4 years. Do you know, like, the current number of systems that are out of compliance?
The last 12 months?
Yeah.
No, I had a compliance report ran over the last 4 years, a spreadsheet, and I worked from there, but I didn't divide that down. That is information we can provide you, though.
Okay, I'd be curious, just, you know, if, as we're thinking about, you know, my thought is, if we're trying to meet this need, how much more money will be required in order to just fix the issue as it stands right now, as we're thinking about these solutions. I'm not saying that will necessarily happen in one fell swoop, but I think it helps us wrap our minds around what's the scope of the need, and, you know, how can we start to meet that need. I think that'd be helpful. And then just one last curious question. Why are the minimum treatment requirements different for surface water and groundwater?
Well, in surface water, you're really concerned about pathogens because, you know, the surface waters are exposed to pathogens, whereas groundwater is really assumed more of a cleaner source when it's compared to pathogens. So there's not that requirement to make sure pathogens are removed as extensively as the surface water treatment rules are. We do still require disinfection to resolve pathogen issues on groundwater.
Representative Droege?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's on PFAS on recycled water. Because you're going to have these sedimentary things that are recycled water, and your PFAS is going to show up, and my understanding is it's very difficult to eliminate. So one of the problems we've had in the past is applying it to cropland, and how do you utilize that? And my interpretation about the only thing they've shown to mitigate that is extreme temperature, like incineration, but then you get graphene oxide produced, which I'm not convinced is a very good chemical either. I just wondered how that was, if there's a way.
Yeah, there's two different kind of details I want to point out there. One, removing PFAS from water, there is treatment that exists for that. I believe there's some granular activated carbon systems that can remove PFAS. The problem is the PFAS is now all in that system, that granular. How do you get rid of that? Because now that becomes a waste that, what are you going to do with that? So the hard part about, you can't destroy, it's hard to destroy PFAS. And they found that, yeah, some instances, extreme heat, you can break that compound down. So it's kind of two different questions. We can remove it from the water, but we still don't know what to do with it once it's in that new media.
Okay, we are about out of time here. Representative Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick about it. I'm pretty interested in this PFAS information generally, particularly regarding the changes from the EPA. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on what the complications, the consequences of this new rule may be for not only our access to water, but maybe our processes that we're discussing today?
I don't know that I'm prepared to give you that kind of evaluation. I can tell you what it appears EPA is going to do is not set MCL requirements for the compounds they said they would. And the press release that was released, I believe, stated the reason for is that there's not enough research about the health risk for those particular compounds. So I don't know what the risk is. The risk has always been that there's PFAS out there that we don't know about.
Okay, we'll call it time here. Thursday of this week, we will work two bills, 2424, the licensing requirements for water well equipment dealers, and also the reuse and recycle with the city of Wichita, I believe. What's that bill number? 2462. We're going to take public testimony on both of those bills on Thursday. A week from today, we will have Jay Kalbus here to give us an update from the Geological Survey. We'll see you Thursday. Thank you.